All right, welcome to Try It Series Virtual Bourbon. My name's McNew's. I'll be your host for the evening, and we have special guests with us from KO Distilling, Peter Mowery. Hey, Peter.
Hey, how's it going?
Yep, thanks for joining us. We're excited you're here.
I am excited to be here and share some delicious spirits with you, tell you everything you wanted to know about KO Distilling.
Yeah, awesome. So I do have some questions for you, then we'll jump into these spirits. KO Distilling broke ground in 2015. Tell us a little bit about that growth and production-wise, what's been going on there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in order to understand the KO Distilling story, you got to understand what KO actually stands for, which leads us into that starting year. But KO stands for Bill Carlson and John O'Mara, who are our two co-founders. Both met in college at the United States Merchant Marine Academy. Both went off, had careers in the nautical industry, sailed in the Navy Reserve, went into defense contracting, very successful business people, retired early and said, what the heck do we do now? And they started a distillery. So KO Distilling is basically a combination of their initials. And in 2013, we established ourselves as a company, but you were entirely correct. In 2015, we started producing spirits. We actually opened to the general public in 2015. At that point is where my story begins. I came on board as their customer experience director, somebody who really led the experience for customers coming into the distillery, and very much like we're doing right now, led people through tastings and distillery tours, did everything that was fun here at the distillery. Over the next couple of years, we went from a portfolio of 2 white gins, crystal clear gins, and a white whiskey, to a full portfolio of aged spirits. We now have bare knuckle wheat whiskey, bare knuckle rye whiskey, bare knuckle bourbon, which we'll be tasting tonight, and cast strength and single barrel iterations, along with our KO Distillers Reserve Bottled and Bond bourbon, which we will also be getting to taste tonight. So we've built our portfolio out. In addition, in 2017, we actually went through a distillery expansion. We went from a 550-gallon Vendome hybrid pot and column still, which is a pot still which requires batching in order to produce spirits, to a 20-foot continuous beer column still, which helped us to triple or quadruple our production. We can actually produce upwards of 1,053-gallon barrels in a year's time. So in addition, we've seen incredible success with our products growing and getting better and better as we're aging. So we're excited to present these products right now as they are, and we're excited to see where these products lead. So they're getting better and better as time goes on. And the final thing I should mention is 2020 was a very strange year. We released our most premium product, which is KO Distillers Reserve, and we'll get to that in a little while. But we also transitioned over into hand sanitizer and produced bare knuckle hand sanitizer. Sold a lot of that and donated a lot of that to our community, first responders and those in the medical field who needed that during the early parts of the pandemic. So we were very blessed in the fact that we could pivot and really help our community, but also kind of keep ourselves busy during that pandemic timeframe. So that's kind of a quick recap. We've been growing ever since 2015, and we have no plans of stopping anytime soon. So.
Yeah, awesome. And it was great to see the craft distilleries were really the ones stepping up with the hand sanitizer and stuff. So thank you guys for being involved in that. Tell us a little bit about your role. You do the customer experience. What's your day-to-day like?
So my current role right now is Virginia Sales and Marketing Director, which is a fancy title that basically means I get to go and have fun with folks just like yourself, doing virtual tastings, going to bars and restaurants and talking about our product, working festivals and events, going to various ABC stores in the state of Virginia here, Coast Guard Exchange stores, that type of thing too. So really just talking about the product and educating people. And I think that's the biggest kind of battle, or really kind of what we want to get accomplished here, I think, as a collective industry, is educating people. So when you walk into the bar and restaurant or your local liquor store, you stop and think about what you're actually going to be purchasing and choose something that really is right for you. And we believe that craft spirits, specifically KO, we represent a really unique portfolio of spirits. And so that is what I get to do right now, is to talk about our spirits and enjoy them just with people like yourself. Before, when I was in that role as customer experience director, which I still maintain is the coolest title, I was able to do that really here with our guests as they were coming in. So I helped to develop our cocktail program, our tasting program, our distillery tour program, everything that was based around our distillery here. And what I will tell you is I had a blast doing that. And I've passed that along to Amy, who is our customer experience director now, and her cocktail program blows my cocktail program out of the water. So if you want a fantastic cocktail, you got to come to the distillery store. We'll treat you really well. We got a lot of great people here at the distillery as well.
Awesome. And that leads into my next question, because everybody here loves distillery tours. I'm sure people are ready to get back out there. What's a tour like at KO Distilling?
Well, one of the beautiful things about KO Distilling is we do everything right here on site. So a distillery tour here at KO is very informative, and you're going to get a lot of knowledge and a lot of understanding of how we go through our process. One of the things that you may or may not know is we use 100% Virginia-based grains for all of the whiskeys that we're going to be trying here today. So you'll see our 2 silos at back. They basically get filled by a farmer, a local farmer. We have our mill, our mash tank, and our fermentation tanks that we go through, and we talk about each one of those processes. We have 2 different stills that I kind of mentioned before, that Vendome hybrid pot and column still that we'll talk about. That's where primarily we make our gins. And then we also have that continuous beer column still, also made by Vendome, that we make most of our whiskeys on. And so we'll go through the process and talk about distillation and recondensing, and then going through a second distillation on the doubler. We talk about our barreling. We use 53-gallon barrels, the traditional size barrels. We want to take the time to do things right. And I think that's a commonality that you're going to find with KO Distilling. We take the time to do things right. Little quick aside, that column still that we put in, instead of building one that would fit within our building, we actually cut a hole in the ceiling, crane lifted it in, and then built a little doghouse on top of our building. And I think if that's not a show of our commitment to quality, I'm not sure what is. A lot of people would have just built a still a little bit shorter, but our founders really wanted something that was going to produce the best, and that's exactly what they went for. The final piece in the process would be bottling. And so depending on if you come on a day where we're actually bottling, you can walk through and see our bottling line, where we do a lot of that by hand. And then you can come up to our tasting room and enjoy a tasting, so you can get to see the entire process all in one kind of swipe. So a distillery tour is a great way to do that here at KO.
Yeah, and that's like the full experience. That sounds awesome. And my final question for you before we jump into all these great spirits, and maybe you can answer it, maybe you can't. It's like asking if you have a favorite child. What's your favorite out of the lineup?
Oh man, that is kind of like asking who your favorite child is. What I would tell you is that I am a huge bourbon fan, so I'm going to lean towards the bourbon. Part of the joy of my job is there is not a product on our portfolio that I would not enjoy, and I enjoy all of them. So I get to have fun with a variety of different products, but I would have to say my heart is really with bourbon. Bare Knuckle bourbon is phenomenal, but KO Distillers Reserve Bottled and Bond bourbon is like next level, and that one I would go ahead and say is my absolute favorite. We are going to get to try that here today.
Exciting. So we'll get started. If you guys jumped in late, we got Mr. Bill and Lenny came in, and Bob. We're starting with this Navy Strength Gin today. And Peter's great Vanna over there with the actual bottle. The labeling's beautiful on these, by the way.
Thank you very much. So actually, let me kind of explain the label here. If you guys, I think the way that we're going to be doing this here tonight, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but go ahead and pour this into your tasting, Glencairn or shot glass, whatever you're going to be tasting that in. As we're going through the tasting, I'm not sure if everyone has their own kind of style of tasting, but I always recommend nosing and then taking a taste. The second sip is really where you're going to get a lot of your flavor. So the first sip, you're really kind of acclimating your mouth. The second sip is where you get a lot of your flavor. Rather than telling you guys what flavor profile I would be expecting and that I taste, I want to hear from you guys first. But while we were doing that tasting, I wanted to explain a couple things on this bottle. And you mentioned the label being beautiful. There's a lot of history behind this label. So the line of gins is referred to as Battle Standard 142. And that is actually a flag flown at the United States Merchant Marine Academy up in Kings Point, New York. That is the alma mater of our 2 founders. And it's actually flown in honor of the 142 cadet midshipmen who died during World War II in service to our country from the United States Merchant Marine Academy. So that is the history behind the name. You'll notice a nautical theme. These are Liberty ships, and those are the type of ships that those 142 would have lost their lives on, transporting goods to the war effort. The other thing that you'll notice is this is referred to as a Navy strength gin. If you're unfamiliar with that term, it has a beautiful story. actually dates back to the British Navy, who used to proof their gin and rum up to 114 proof, for the very specific reason that if it spills on gunpowder, it can still ignite. So what you'll find is that this has a little bit more proof than your average gin, but I think it goes to show you can create a beautiful spirit that is higher proof, but has such a delicious, robust flavor, and is actually really easy drinking at the same time. So that is the basic history of Battle Standard 142 Navy Strength Gin. Now that you guys have had a chance to try that spirit, I'm interested to hear from you guys. What kind of flavor profile are you detecting?
Man, I got a lot of floral on the nose, but not so much on my palate.
A lot of gin on the palate.
You say Jim on the palate?
I said a lot of juniper on the palate.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's some citrus, some coriander.
Yeah, definitely some citrus notes.
Definitely.
Lime.
That's it. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, the lime. Yeah, that was a good call out.
Yeah.
Lime. I was trying to figure out what that was.
But she's drinking Corona with lime at the same time, so that might be her.
No, I was getting something. I'm like, it's not like an orange citrus. It was a different kind of citrus. That makes sense to me.
Jimmy had me worried. I thought that you was drinking Crown with lime instead of Corona with lime. I'm like,
I definitely get
We use 8 different botanicals, and you guys have definitely covered some of those. Is
Orange?
anyone detecting some spices in there? Any type of spices you might be detecting?
I definitely get like orange peel too.
Yep. Okay. So bitter
Yeah.
orange is one of those that we have in there.
I get cinnamon, maybe.
Very good.
yeah.
I was going to say cinnamon, but I say cinnamon for everything. I was like, maybe
Right.
not.
Cinnamon is a kind of a surprise visitor. Not a lot of gins use cinnamon, but you'll get a beautiful cinnamon finish.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's really nice.
So this spirit right here, Battle Standard 142 Navy Strength Gin, because of its higher proof, you can either make a really delicious, kind of more alcohol forward drink, like a gin martini or an aviation. Or if you want to kind of hide that behind something that's going to taste delicious and pair very nicely, it has enough flavor to kind of punch through a gin lemonade. And that is my personal favorite in the summertime. I like to go get like an organic lemonade that has a lot of juice to it. So it's a little bit more tart. And what's beautiful about this gin is it has that flavor that works really beautifully with the lemonade. So it works to highlight rather than to hide. And what it does is it pairs beautifully with those lemon notes and a little bit of sweetness from the lemonade as well. So let me tell you the botanicals that we actually use in this gin, and you can kind of compare that with what we were just talking about. So one thing I will mention is Battle Standard 142 Navy Strength Gin is an American dry. And for anybody who is unfamiliar, a London dry, very much like Bombay Sapphire, Beefeater, Tanqueray, it's going to be very heavy on the juniper. This one is going to be a lot lighter on the juniper. We use a lot less. It still needs to be there because gin needs juniper, but we're going to use a lot less in that American dry style. So juniper is that first note that you will get on this product, but we also use a bitter orange peel. So the second kind of middle flavor that a lot of people detect is orange or citrus. We also use cinnamon, and cinnamon is kind of unique to this spirit. A lot of gins do not use cinnamon, but that is that kind of beautiful finishing note that a lot of people. In addition to those 3, we also use cardamom and coriander. So I think I heard coriander as we were talking about different spices. So cardamom, coriander. We also use grains of paradise, which is kind of a West African plant that has a nice peppery pop to it. And last but not least, we use orris root and angelica root, which give a little bit of floral notes. So that was one of the first things that was mentioned. And I think it's beautiful that you can pick out all of those beautiful kind of subtle flavors, even in something that is as high proof as 114 proof. So I like to say that you get big, bold, and vibrant juniper, citrus, and cinnamon. And then if you have a really good palate, which it sounds like you guys do, you get all those beautiful kind of subtle spice and earth and floral notes in there too.
Definitely. That one's a super enjoyable gin. I like that one a lot.
You would not believe the number of whiskey drinkers who come to me and say, I am not a gin fan. I like to say, would you like to become a gin fan? And many, many, many people leave with a bottle being very, very surprised. So if you have anybody who's on the fence about becoming a gin drinker, definitely get a bottle of Battle Standard 142 Navy Strength Gin. I think you can make that happen.
Perfect. Yeah, it's going to convert a lot of people. Let's jump into this barrel finished gin.
So you'll notice something right off the bat, and that's going to be this beautiful kind of golden color. This is the exact same gin, Battle Standard 142, but it is the 90 proof variation. So the one thing that's unfortunate about this gin is if you pour it on gunpowder, you can't ignite it, right? But otherwise, a little bit more subtle, so you can actually taste a lot more of those flavors. And it's been rested in a used bourbon barrel for about 5 to 6 months. And what that does is it imparts some beautiful kind of sweetness in there. I'll let you guys identify the specific sweetness because there's some things that I detect when I drink this. A little bit of sweetness and a little bit of oak. And what I like to use Battle Standard 142 barrel finished gin for is a lot of like rum drinks. So like a gin mojito is really good with this. A gin and Stormy instead of a dark and Stormy. We did a watermelon cucumber cooler with this. So anything that has that benefits from a little bit more sweetness is actually really beautiful. And I know that we have a lot of whiskey drinkers here today. Being a whiskey drinkers, I think you're really going to like this since it leans towards the whiskey side of the spectrum. So go ahead and nose that, take a taste, tell us what you think.
It's definitely less floral. Like you pick more up more about like oak barrel smell.
Totally different mouthfeel, obviously, too, with this one. It initially kind of feels like water, but it does stick around. And it gives you kind of a peppery finish, which is interesting because at first you're like, oh, this is going to be very, very mellow, but it does stick around for quite a bit on your palate. I'll say that.
So food for thought too. We are going from Navy strength down to barrel finished. And so that will kind of affect in that way slightly. The reason that I like to go in this order is because barrel finished or the Navy strength is probably the most surprising of the line, and it's definitely the most popular. So I wanted to go ahead and start off with a bang and kind of go into the barrel finished. So that may actually kind of lend itself to what you're saying there, which is spot on. As far as a flavor profile, I had mentioned kind of some sweetness. Are you guys getting any type of sweetness, and do you detect anything specific? Does anything jump out at you guys?
Yeah, it's got
No, go ahead.
it's got like a honey sweetness for me, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I was trying to put my finger on it. So yeah, honey is good. Anybody else? Just jump in with what you're getting.
Get some cedar, that like almost a sweet cedar note.
Okay.
More of a honey. It's more of a honeysuckle.
Yeah.
Heidi and I are on the same page.
So what was the comment right before that?
Honeysuckle?
Yes. Okay. So that's beautiful. That's exactly the note that I get when I drink this. You get that nice floral. You get that almost the honey or honeysuckle. So you guys are right in line with what I'm normally tasting there. I really appreciate that. That's awesome.
Ooh, we're good.
Yeah, I can see that. This would be great. Like you mentioned, like a watermelon, like that would be great in like summer cocktails. Like it's light and refreshing.
Have you ever done the first one with Italian water ice?
Ooh, I have not, but that sounds delicious. Like a lemon water ice.
Yeah.
I think that would be delicious.
That does sound good.
Sound like Peppy G there. That's the kind of stuff he does all day.
The beauty the first one we tasted is it does have that beautiful kind of orange and citrus, so it pairs beautifully with a lot of lemon and lime flavored drinks or kind of forward drinks, if that makes sense. This one, like I said, adds a little bit of that sweetness, and so yeah, I think a gin and Stormy is probably one of my absolute favorites, which is just a little bit of ginger beer and lime juice. It's really easy, but it's super refreshing in the summer. So as we are moving through our tasting, we've tasted our 2 different gins, and we're going to move into our whiskeys. So obviously whiskey is made very differently than gin. If you guys want me to kind of go into how gin is made, I'm happy to do that in just a second here. But what I would recommend is everybody take a water bottle or a glass of water, go ahead and take a palate cleanse, make sure that you're ready for the whiskeys before we move to that. That's something that everyone is interested in as far as learning how gin is actually made in comparison to whiskey.
Yeah, let us know.
So I had mentioned before that our gin is made on our 550-gallon Wyndham hybrid pot and column still. So it's more controlled because it is a pot, and because it is a spirit that is made with botanicals, we can't necessarily go through the same process of using the column still because it's literally botanicals flavoring items that we use in the actual still. So the only thing that we don't actually make here on site is the grain neutral spirit that we begin with. It's the base. The way I like to explain that is it's kind of like a blank slate or a blank canvas. What we do is we get that grain neutral spirit or that canvas and we distill on top of that. Our second distillation is where we add all those beautiful botanicals. And what's going to happen is you're going to have a lot of liquid contact with all the botanicals with the exception of orange peel. Orange, if you've ever brewed or distilled, basically if it has liquid contact, it will pull out bitterness. But if it has vapor contact, it will pull out that beautiful citrus without the bitterness. So we have something called the gin basket, which is almost like an industrial sized tea bag. The vapor rises through and goes through and pulls with it all those beautiful citrus notes. So we're going to add all those botanicals at different times and temperatures and trying to pull and extract all of those beautiful flavors out. And so it goes through that second distillation, which is where we paint the picture, which is each one of these gins here. And that is, in short, how you would go through the process of making a gin. It goes through the same process of distillation, basically, boiling, recondensing, basically distilling up through the various trays across the vapor line, hitting a condenser, and then going back into your sight glass and spirit safe. But along the way, it's going to go through that beautiful, gin basket, pulling with it all those citrus notes and that type of thing. So the difference between that and a whiskey is your base. You're basically trying to taste all of those botanicals without necessarily tasting the base grain, which I believe in this case is going to be corn. Whereas all of the other whiskeys, a lot of the flavor comes from those grains. So we don't want to take it up as high as you would a grain neutral spirit. We don't want to be grain neutral. We want it to be grain flavorful and delicious. So we'll talk more about whiskey production in just a second, but I wanted to stop and give you a little bit of a taste of how we make our gin.
Thank you.
Great. The botanicals you use, are they grown on site or are they sourced in from different farmers?
So what I will tell you is that while we source all of our grain for the whiskeys here in Virginia, all of the grains are products that do grow here in Virginia, whereas like you're not going to necessarily find oranges growing here in Virginia. I mentioned grains of paradise. It's a West African plant. It doesn't necessarily grow as well here. Whereas juniper berry is something that you would grow here. So for those botanicals, we reach out to the best regions that we can find those. So those are not necessarily going to be local just because they can't be necessarily. But we go for the best quality in that regard. That makes sense.
Yeah, and it shows in the flavor. Like you can tell you're putting good in because you're getting good out. So
yeah, exactly.
Yep. Those gins were fantastic. You guys have drank some water. I want to move on. Let's jump into this bare knuckle straight bourbon whiskey.
All right.
90 proof.
So this is one of my favorites, like I had mentioned before. But this is bare knuckle straight bourbon whiskey, produced with 100% Virginia-based grains. The mash bill for this is going to be 70% corn, 20% wheat, and 10% malted barley. One of the things that I think is phenomenal is a lot of people, when you ask them where does bourbon come from, the answer that a lot of people give you is Kentucky. And 95% of all bourbon actually does come from Kentucky. So Kentucky is owed its due. They produce some fantastic bourbon, but we are part of that 5% outside of Kentucky that's actually producing. And if you think about what makes Kentucky bourbon as delicious as it is, it's going to be the beautiful kind of fluctuation in temperature that pushes that liquid into the barrel and pulls back all those beautiful flavors. So you need hot summers and cold winters. Here in Virginia, guess what we have? We have hot summers and cold winters. Sometimes in the same week, we have hot and cold. So water supply is very important in Kentucky, and they stress limestone aquifers and limestone kind of clarification and filtration. We have really great water supply here too. We did a lot of testing before we actually came to to make sure we had the right water for what we were trying to do. And the last thing is the agriculture, right? Kentucky has some really great grains. And guess what? Virginia has some great agriculture. So a lot of the things that make Kentucky successful make Virginia successful as well. The other thing I will mention is Kentucky used to be part of Virginia. So if you go back a couple of years, it was part of Virginia. So we're in the same kind of range. And I think that it really shows in the whiskey as well. So I've given you the mash bill, a little bit of history of bourbon, kind of where it's made, or that it can be made in Virginia. The final thing I will mention is that bourbon has to meet certain criteria. So it has to be made in the US. Bourbon has to be primarily corn. So when you're drinking bourbon, make sure you're thinking corn. Because it's corn, it's going to have a little bit more sweetness. It's going to have a little bit more sugar. So the alcohol conversion is better. It's going to be basically needing to be aged in a new charred oak container. We use new charred white oak American barrels, and we use 53-gallon size because we think that presents the best product, and that's the traditional size. And it has to come off the still at no more than 160 proof and go into the barrel at no more than 125 proof in order to be called bourbon. The whole point in that is maintaining integrity of flavor. And if there's anything that I can't stress enough, we want to maintain that integrity of flavor. So we meet all those criteria. We can call ourselves a bourbon. And I'm very interested in hearing more about what you guys are tasting with bare knuckle bourbon.
Just a quick question. Do you know what proof you're coming off the still at?
That is a good question. We entered the barrel at about 120. So actually, yes, we entered the barrel at about 120. So I would guess it's going to be in something in that range. It would be that. Actually, that's not true. It can go up to 160. I do not know the answer to that question. I probably should, but I do not.
No problem.
Before we jump into everybody's tasting notes, can you tell us about the bare knuckle name?
Of course I can. So we talked about KO Distilling standing for Bill Carlson and John O'Meara. However, a lot of people like to say think knockout, right?
Yeah.
So Bare Knuckle was an organic way for us to celebrate KO and our fighting spirit, so to speak. But Bare Knuckle is also kind of a double entendre. It's not only kind of a fighting reference or a knockout KO reference, but it's also handcrafted. We do everything by hand here. And like I said, one of the things that sets us apart is we do everything right on site. So Bare Knuckle is very much about using our hands and handcrafting what we are drinking here today.
Yep, love that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no tie-in to Jack Dempsey, right? Where are you guys out of Virginia?
Manassas.
Manassas, and Jack Dempsey, the famous boxer, was known as the Manassas Mauler. I don't know if there's I always figured there was a connection there. You got KO, which would be a knockout, and boxers on the thing. I always thought there was a tie to Jack Dempsey. Is there not?
I don't think we have a tie to him yet, but we have more products coming out, so maybe in the future. I don't know.
Okay, I think we just got some scoop there without getting.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, scoop without asking for
I
scoop.
think we can read between the lines and know we just got scoop.
Either that or Steve, you're now in charge of their marketing campaign. One of the two things.
Here's what I would tell you at the end of our session. I would love to tell you about next upcoming products, which is not necessarily something we're advertising quite yet, but it's very much in the works. I don't believe it's going to be specifically with Jack Dempsey, but we do have some awesome stuff coming. One thing I did want to mention is that this fighter right now, right here, her name is Texas Mamie Donovan. I'm not sure if you guys can see that. Texas Mamie Donovan. She is a real fighter. She's a female fighter that fought in the late 1800s, 1900s in Texas, obviously. And she was probably pound for pound the best female fighter of her time. She probably would have been a world champ if she wanted to cross the pond and go fight in Europe, but that wasn't what she really wanted to do. So one of the things that you will find about KO is we like to celebrate people. So the Battle Standard 142 celebrates those 142 real people who perished in service to our country. This is a real fighter here by the name of Texas Mamie Donovan. And I'll go through and kind of introduce you to the other fighters as well. I'll also introduce basically where we get those pictures in a minute here, but I want to hear from you guys as far as tasting notes are concerned, and we can talk about that in a minute.
Yeah, let's hear them. Bob walked away. Mr. Bill, what are you getting?
It's almost like a brandy.
Okay.
I don't know. I like it though.
I do too.
There you go.
Very
Great.
nutty.
Yep.
Lot of almond.
Yeah. I get some toffee out of it.
You get some raisin.
Catching a bunch of like, kind of like a cherry lozenge and some cinnamon.
Thought like on the nose, like a caramel sauce or something like that, like caramel sauce.
Yeah, it was super caramely on the nose and then not on my palate though. So I kind of agree with like that
Different
cinnamon,
taste on the
the
palate.
raisins.
Yeah.
Hey,
Definitely.
Peter, is there anything about the, it was corn, wheat, and barley, correct?
Corn, wheat, and malted barley.
Is there anything about any of those three grains that's out of the ordinary, or maybe something else that I don't know? Because I'm really digging this, but I'm curious what, you know, it could be one of anything, but is there anything in particular that's out of-
So to just so I understand what you're saying, it's a great spirit, but it's different than what you were expecting, and you're trying to understand why. Is that kind of?
Well, I mean, I typically think of you know, if Kentucky bourbon is the center and craft distilling sometimes steps slightly left of center, I wouldn't necessarily mistake this for a Kentucky offering, but I really like what I'm getting. And I didn't know if there was anything to your process other than like, you know, your distillation and origin of grain, but is there anything that is unequivocally, you know, a effort to be different, or does it just kind of veer that way by nature of production practice?
I see, and I think the answer is the latter. The intention is not to deviate from what bourbon is normally. The intention is to produce the best bourbon we can with processes and procedures and the equipment and grains and barrels that we have. And I think what you're going to find is distillery character is something that changes from distillery to distillery. If we gave our exact recipe to another distillery who replicated, but they had a different still, different procedures, time and temperature, you know, different barrels, different temperature, and, humidity and whatnot. A lot of those things, although they might seem like subtle things, they do add up. So I think what you're referring to is really our distillery character that that we get naturally, not necessarily something that we did on purpose to deviate from somebody else. We try to be our own, but following all those rules, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's awesome. Does make sense.
Yeah, different crowd here than the normal one. So we'll talk about, is this Yellow Dent number 2, or is this this different type
Yeah,
of?
we get nerdy about it.
Yeah, we understand the corn part, so but we want to know exactly what that corn is. Yeah, stuff like that. So different crowd for sure.
That's fair. That's really fair.
Yeah, so you were just saying like it's a normal barley, right? Because like if this were a rye, like I would almost say it was like a chocolate rye, because there's like something deeper with it that I can't figure out.
So basically it would be a normal malted barley. I don't want to give you more information than I have or make something up, so I can't really tell you this strain of barley.
Appreciate that.
We know when you're lying too, so don't.
Yeah.
So I can definitely look that up and find out the specific strains that we are using. But I believe, I do know for a fact that our grain comes from the northern neck of Virginia, from a farm or conglomerate of farms called Bay's Best Feed. So that is our source of all of our grains. So it's the northern neck of Virginia in which they come from. And so that territory, the grain that they produce and the method that they do will definitely lend itself to the spirit being the way that it is. So
I would assume when you're talking about the rye portion of it, it's going to be different anyway. The Virginia rye has got to be very different than a rye that's grown in the northern part of the U.S., where it's typically, or the colder areas are going to be where the rye typically come from, or a lot of the times it comes from Canada. So
yeah,
Virginia rye is going to add a distinct flavor by itself. So to McNew's point, and also to McNew's point, I didn't say this, but on the nose, I also got a little bit of a Tootsie Roll, which kind of goes in the line. You said chocolate, obviously.
Chocolate, yeah. There's like something chocolate there that I cannot like put my finger on, but I love it. I think it's delicious. It's great.
It's very good. It's very good.
Yeah.
I like
so.
this.
Let me ask you guys a question. Nobody has mentioned it yet, but some people taste almost like a banana nut bread in this one, which is actually kind of interesting. And it depends on the person that you're talking with, but in the middle there's a beautiful kind of nuttiness that somebody did actually mention.
Yeah.
And some people detect a little bit of like a banana or a banana nut bread, because there is a little bit of a breadiness in there too. So one of the things that I would challenge you guys to look for and tell me, and honestly, I'm not telling you this is in it. I'm saying I want your opinion, but watch for a banana nut bread and see if that might be something that jumps out. And to the point of chocolate, that is one of the flavors that is developing in this spirit, absolutely. And I think we're going to find more of that as we age that longer.
Okay.
What is the age on that?
So each one of our bare knuckle whiskeys, or any of our bare knuckle whiskeys, including the bare knuckle bourbon, will have a little ring card girl on the back of it that will hold up a sign that shows exactly how old this product is.
That's
The
cool.
one that I'm looking here is just under 2 years. So basically 34 months. And I believe that's going to be exactly what you guys are drinking as well. I would need to see the actual bottle that was distributed from to see exactly the age statement, but right around that 3-year point.
So Steve, you didn't put that on the back of the label.
Yeah, you didn't.
I'm just
Yeah.
saying.
Justine designs labels.
It's
BP
her
on the bus.
I think you just
I'll be
threw her
honest,
under the bus.
I didn't see the ring card girl. I didn't pay that much attention. I poured these in that, but I did not see that. But I
I
wasn't paying
didn't have
attention.
the bottle to see it, so, I mean, I was just going off of the list on Eventbrite, sorry.
I blame
He
Steve.
had the
Justin.
bottle.
That's very good.
So
Hey, yeah, go ahead.
the other thing I will mention too is that the other two spirits that we do have in the bare knuckle line, bare knuckle wheat whiskey and bare knuckle rye whiskey, have and will continue to age a little bit longer. The bourbon itself, bourbon, there's a run on bourbon, and people absolutely love the bare knuckle bourbon. So we have had trouble aging it longer. Essentially, people like to ask, how long are you going to age it for? And I always like to tell people, it depends on how quickly you drink it. So we will get to the point where we'll have that at a full 3 years and then full 4 years and continue to age that. And I think 4 years is probably going to be our baseline when we can actually reach that. But we have a avid consumer base who's keeping that a little bit lower, which is actually kind of a fun story of success. So
Yeah. Awesome. So speaking of 4 years, let's jump into this bottled and bond we have.
yes, all right. So this is our KO Distillers Reserve bottled in bond bourbon whiskey. And being that we're all whiskey nerds here, bottled in bond is going to be something that jumps out at you as really kind of a certification by the government saying, we did this. This is ours. It's not sourced. And I will tell you that all of our products we've done ourselves. However, this one is actually certified by the government and also by bottled in bond. You know that it is no less than 4 years, because that's one of the requirements in order to be a bottled in bond product. I can jump into those if anyone has any questions about what it takes to be bottled in bond, but long story short, government certification saying, yes, we made this, yes, it's quality, and it's a 4-year or older product. So KO Distillers Reserve has gone to the San Francisco World Spirits Competition in its first year of being out on the market, and that's actually come away with the double gold. It's the second one of our spirits that won double gold in that competition, and we're very proud of it. It is in a variety of ABC stores across the state of Virginia, and it's selling quite quickly, very much like the bare knuckle bourbon. We want to make sure that we have enough in order to continue aging that a little bit older and older. I should also mention that if you're looking for this product and you're not in Virginia, best place to go would be our website, kodistilling.com, and you can find online retailers who can get that to you pretty much wherever you need to. But KO Distillers Reserve, I want you guys to try and see what you think. The grain bill on this one is going to be that 70% corn, 20% wheat, and 10% malted barley. So the grain bill is the same as the bare knuckle bourbon. However, this is actually these are coming from barrels that we had set aside years ago. In 2020, Bill Carlson, the K&KO, recognized that it was the 400th anniversary of the first written record of a distillate from corn here in the United States. It actually happened here in Virginia. There was a settler by the name of George Thorpe who in 1620 wrote back to England and said, I've created a corn whiskey, essentially, or a corn liquor that's good as any strong English beer. And so that is the first written record of a whiskey here within America. So we wanted to celebrate that 400th anniversary, and we put some barrels in reserve, hence the name Distillers Reserve. So these were ones that were meeting the top criteria as far as our quality standards were concerned. We aged those for longer and set them aside specifically for this product. So that is what we are drinking currently. And I will let you guys kind of tell us your thoughts. What are your feelings on the taste profile that you're enjoying right now?
This is a freaking liquid Heath bar. I'm digging this, man.
Hey, I get the chocolate on this one.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
Scott just summed that one up. That was great.
Yeah.
Taste
I get
proof on that one. Yeah.
I mentioned chocolate before, and I was excited because I was thinking to myself, if you think there's chocolate in this one, we'll just
Get ready.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
you got
you were totally right about the English toffee as far as concerned.
totally chocolate, toffee, nutty. Oh, it's my favorite one so far.
Yeah, I got it. Same.
yeah, this is fantastic.
Can we have more?
Hey,
Of course you can. Go to kodistilling.com and order yourself a bottle. No.
There you go.
There are a couple bottles. You need,
Oh, I
you need more
will.
than one.
Justine, if Steve tells you to meet him at the distillery, Virginia at 10 a.m., don't go.
Heidi remembers this differently than I do. I had a group go work there. I remember Heidi calling me and saying, "Hey, you got Justine and Carrie going to something? What are they doing? I want to do it." I'm like, "Sure, come on." And then it ended up being they were working for the day, and they're working for the day. Then Heidi wasn't so impressed. So
No, you know that's not true.
yeah, that's how I remember it.
Come in, what are we doing? And you said, "Oh,
I had a great day, Steve.
be there at 10 a.m." And I was like, "Okay."
Steve and I had a great day.
Yeah, and
Jim and I just sat there and drank all day. It was great.
Yeah.
I know
three of
that
us worked all day.
they had a event request on Facebook for people to come help them. I think it's this weekend. So Heidi, you can go back out there and help them out.
No, I'm good.
You could be a crew leader now. You have experience.
Yeah, everyone talks about how great this bottling stuff and all that is. I don't like that at all. I don't want to be involved in a distillery bottling. With a small distillery, you got to put the corks in and label stuff. I had to do that with Lenny. Bill and I did. Right, Bill?
Damn right.
Bitching, Steve. It was fun.
Yeah.
Bill loved it.
We did it for like an hour and a half. Imagine that being your job all day. Oh,
Right.
Is there an assembly line, or do you have to actually fill the bottles yourself and wipe them off?
Is it done by hand or is it automated?
Yeah.
Great question. So the answer is yes to both.
right.
We have a line that we'll set up that consists of a bunch of kind of folding tables that are next to a bunch of pieces of equipment. So we have a foraging machine, which is basically has two prongs. You put two bottles on top of it upside down, and it will spray a little bit of the spirit itself into the bottle. That rinses out the bottle. And we also have a little bit of argon gas, which is inert, and we'll go ahead and sink to the bottom because it's heavier than oxygen. We're then going to go ahead and slide those bottles down the line. We have what we refer to as a whiskey cow. It has 6 udders that are gravity fed. So you have somebody who grabs those 2 bottles and put them up, and the whiskey cow will go and fill those bottles. What happens then too is the liquid being heavier than the argon gas basically goes to the bottom. The gas basically rises to the top. So if we're doing this properly, basically at the top, you're not going to have any oxygen, which is going to help that first sip when you go ahead and open this up, crack a bottle open. We're then going to go ahead and hand cork and slide that down the line. We do have, thank goodness, a beautiful labeler. It's called a CDA labeler. And we can put the bottles down the line, and it will go ahead and take care of putting on the caps and heat sealing them. It'll take care of putting on the front and the back labels. In these ones right now, there's no written elements. Actually, that's not true. On the back of each of them, the little ring-colored girl, that is a written element. So we do have some kind of handwritten flourishes that we do need to take care of as well. And then obviously we're going to be, kind of wiping them down, making sure everything is on properly, and then putting those into making boxes, putting them into them as well. So what I will tell you is I've definitely helped the production team with a variety of different, bottling, and it's fun for the first little bit, and then you're like, okay, we got to get this going. So
Do you have a wax film on your actual label that you have to scrub off to be able to write on the label?
Great question. So basically, our labels are built with a space for that writing that's actually made a little bit differently. So the material on that specific space is not kind of colored in the same way or manufactured in the same way, so that we can actually write and it will actually stick.
Can you send
Because
it to a friend of ours? And by the way, I used the term whiskey cow once in New Orleans and it didn't go well for me.
So far with this group, I think this one's been a standout. There's some people in the chat saying like toffee bars, that it's absolutely delicious. We're loving it.
Yeah.
But we have some wheated whiskeys to try. So let's do this wheat at 90 proof.
Before we jump into the wheat whiskey, I wanted to mention a couple of tasting notes we didn't mention, and I wanted to see if you guys had pulled out any of those, and then I will move to wheat whiskey. We'll get into that too. But on this one, the KO Distillers Reserve Bottle and Bond Bourbon, I get a little bit of almond and that kind of like caramel and vanilla that evolve into that beautiful English toffee. A little bit more almond forward that comes out. A little bit more chocolate, like a bittersweet dark chocolate for me. But I also get in the middle that kind of lactone, almost cherry or apricot is one thing that I pull out myself, or maybe a little bit of peach. But apricot is the one that I'm actually tasting when I'm in kind of the middle of that KO Distillers Reserve. Was there anybody else who tasted a little bit of apricot?
Yeah, I can pick that up. I really like that. I like that kind of off-profile fruit flavor that's hidden in there.
It was sour.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for trying. And again, I love doing tastings like this with people who are experienced too, because I get to hear from you guys. And when I ask about flavors, really it's just a confirmation of, yes, this is actually what I'm tasting, or hey, I'm tasting something different. And so I love going through tastings like this for that reason. Let's go to our wheat whiskey. So Bare Knuckle straight wheat whiskey is going to be the next one that we're going to be trying. Fighter on the front here is Jimmy Gardner. He's another real fighter around the turn of the century, late 1800s, early 1900s. This one is going to be primarily wheat, as a wheat whiskey must be, 60% wheat, but it's also going to be 30% rye and 10% malted barley. So what that does is it produces almost like a bourbon light. You're not going to get these heavier sweetnesses that you get from corn. You're going to get a little bit lighter sweetness from the wheat. You're also going to get the flavor profile coming from the rye as well. So this one's kind of a beautiful balance. And what I will tell you is I really feel like this is kind of the hidden gem with our line. We have such power players and some of the other spirits that sometimes people overlook this, but it is such an easy drink and really delicious whiskey. So I want you guys to nose, take a taste. Tell me what you're tasting for our Bare Knuckle straight wheat whiskey.
Yeah, with it being a whiskey and not like a wheated bourbon, is it aged in used barrels or is it still getting new barrels?
It's still going to be a new charred white oak American barrel, just like a bourbon is going to be primarily corn. A wheat whiskey is going to be primarily wheat. However, a lot of the same requirements are there, and a new charred oak container still maintains, no matter if it's a wheat whiskey or a bourbon whiskey or a rye whiskey as well. Very good question. I will tell you, a lot of people can confuse wheated bourbons and wheat whiskeys. Right. And it's amazing. It's amazing how few people really know and appreciate the wheat whiskey side of the spectrum. But what I will tell you is not all wheat whiskeys are created equal. I think ours is very good, but there are some
bad, to be honest with you. Wheat is a tough whiskey to make. Yeah.
So there are definitely some whiskeys out there that are not necessarily of the same caliber. But before I kind of jump in and talk about anything else, I want to hear from you guys.
Yeah, we have Mr. Barton getting apple and pear.
Smelled apple first. As soon as I tasted it, it smelled more of a pear.
Yeah.
Okay.
A little bit of a sour tint to it in comparison to the apple. Good flavor though.
I got a little bit of on the nose, it was kind of like a honey graham cracker. But
okay.
On the palate, I picked up the mint that you get from rye.
Yep.
I like the honey graham on the nose. I get that too.
Mm-hmm.
And the pear on the taste too. So like Tim was saying, so I definitely get that.
A lot of times, if somebody identifies himself as an Irish whiskey drinker, I will direct them towards this whiskey specifically, because you do get a lot of those kind of variations of notes that are within that kind of range that you're talking about as well. So less traditional kind of bourbon notes and more kind of traditional, Irish whiskey, which is actually kind of interesting. But a lot of my Irish whiskey drinkers really gravitate towards the bare knuckle wheat whiskey. The other thing too is this is very, in my opinion, is very mellow and soft as far as whiskey go. And so if you have somebody who is not necessarily a whiskey drinker and you're trying to get them into whiskey, this is a phenomenal whiskey to do that.
Good point. Yeah.
So one of the things that I detect on the front, and I think that honey graham is the closest thing we've talked about so far, is really butterscotch. I get a heavy hit of butterscotch right up front. Is anyone else getting any type of like butterscotch or related flavors?
Yeah, I get butterscotch followed by vanilla.
Vanilla?
Yeah, I was thinking like a vanilla pudding or something like that, like a sweet vanilla.
It's sweet.
Yeah. That's good.
And then some spice from the barrel, like oakiness.
Mm-hmm. And it is 30% rye too. So some of that spice may actually be coming from the rye too.
This is a good wheat whiskey.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Very good.
They're hard to do.
Very interesting mash bill. I'll say that.
Yeah. So let me give you some background, a little bit of background on the wheat whiskey and why we decided to make it as it is. We wanted to make a white whiskey. And so one of the three original spirits that we made was a product called Virginia Moon, which has since transitioned into bare knuckle American whiskey. And it is a crystal clear white whiskey. It's delicious. It makes a fantastic moonshine margarita or a Manassas mule instead of a Moscow mule. But we wanted something that was delicious right up front and didn't need to age quite as much in order to be bottled as a white whiskey. And what our founders came to the conclusion of is that essentially, if they used corn, they tried a lot of corn spirits that were white whiskeys and they didn't really love them. And so in doing that research that they had to do to start, basically they determined they wanted to produce a wheated style whiskey that would be our original white whiskey and evolve into another product. So that is why this is the very first aged whiskey, our bare knuckle American wheat whiskey. And now it's our bare knuckle straight wheat whiskey. All right, so do we want to go ahead and move on to our cask strength edition of this same spirit so you can taste the difference between the 90 proof and our cask strength iteration?
Yeah, let's jump into that one.
All right. So you'll notice here that our two bottles are going to look very similar. However, you're going to have the black top for the small batch iteration versus the gold top and the gold KO for the single barrel cask strength. We do have a single barrel offering that is not yet cask strength, but this is the full Monty, the full cask strength, beautiful flavor. You'll notice down here at the bottom, we have written on the bottom what the proof is. I had mentioned before that these go into the barrel at 120 proof, and they're going to come out around 121 to 128. This one in my hand is at 121. What that's going to do is it's going to give you a little bit more heat, obviously, but you're going to get beautiful, robust flavor that that is going to really give you exactly what the barrel has to offer right as it's coming out of the barrel. So it's not diluted, it's right at that barrel strength, cask strength. So go ahead and take a taste, see what you think. I'm very interested in hearing what you're picking up as far as flavors are concerned.
I tell you, it's got a great fuzzy mouthfeel. I feel like I've just come from the dentist, where you
This is my favorite so far. It's
nice.
It's way more complex, I think, than the others.
Mm-hmm.
A lot more going on.
Peanut brittle, I would say, is a flavor that I'm getting with this one.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'm picking up more of that nuttiness. And I was going to stay on that last one. It was kind of like mincemeat, and this one is definitely more peanut butter.
Yeah.
And there's that fuzzy tongue again, man. I feel like I'm just coming off the Novocaine. Hit me again, Doc.
Yeah, let's get some thoughts. Bruce, what are you getting off this one?
So I'm getting Bill's Donuts of Centerville, Ohio. They're plain cake donut, which I actually love.
Oddly specific.
Matter of fact, if I had a couple, I could dip them
Very
in here.
specific, Bruce.
Peter, you need to put that in your tasting notes there at the shop there. That would be.
Use that, Peter. That's yours.
Send us all donuts.
Yes.
Yeah.
I need to make sure I get a recording of this so I can take these notes down and
It's recorded, so yeah.
Yeah, it's recorded. We'll send it over it'll upload. I'll send it over. Yeah.
You can do breakfast. You can do breakfast pairings at the distillery. Just have them ship over donuts, and you just pair this up with donuts. It'd be fantastic.
Yeah, whiskey and donuts. People love that.
Sounds like Bruce can hook you up. I think he's popular there.
Hey,
yeah.
Bill's is nationally ranked, so yeah, we can hook you up with that.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that you actually mentioned that. Now that I'm thinking about it, we do have a local bar and restaurant in the Fairfax area that did a kind of a donut hole and cask wheat whiskey pairing. And I wasn't sure if it was that specific one. It worked really well, but I think kind of some what you're talking about there kind of clarifies or gives a little bit more information there as to why that might have been a really good pairing. Because it works really nicely. That's wonderful and very specific. I love the
But apparently this is a big deal. Bob lives in Lima and has to go down to this donut.
Bill's is huge. Bill's is huge.
Yeah. So Bob, do you agree? Are you getting that cake donut?
He's on mute.
He's working.
Yeah, absolutely. It's nice and yeasty, just like a Bill's donut.
Yeah. Okay.
I'd almost say like a Krispy Kreme, but you know.
That's probably good. This could be a breakfast bourbon. Or a breakfast whiskey, I should say.
Let's say all.
Mhm. They can be, depending on how you want your day to go.
You could,
For the record, the best donuts are at the Donut Stop in Lima, Missouri. Barton can agree with me on that.
Yes.
He knows. He knows.
They're good. They're good.
Steve, I'll go with you.
Okay. Yes.
All right, so we have to have a donut taste off.
Yeah. Well, we will. Maybe we're
Going
doing these
July,
events.
I'm going to have to bring some Bill's
Yes.
donuts.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I'm gonna go ahead and that this
Or
would
none.
go with pancakes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
One of the things I do love about the cask strength iterations of all of our bare knuckle products, bare knuckle wheat whiskey, rye whiskey, and bourbon, is that you get such a depth of flavor. And because it is single barrel, we get to choose the barrel that we think represents the best. And I'm really happy that you guys are enjoying this as much as we are. So,
Peter, what did you say the mash bill was on this?
so this is going to be 60% wheat, 30% rye, and 10% malted barley.
Yeah, I get a ton of rye on this. I was going to ask the same question because I get a lot of rye spice off of this.
But it is.
Oh, yeah.
It's excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never had a wheat whiskey where my tongue gets those zings like you get with a
Right.
rye. So
So is that the rye
Yeah,
bringing
it's
out that spice?
interesting.
yeah, that's what's going to get you is that rye. So yeah, that's cool. I mean, it's really good.
As I mentioned before, there are some wheat whiskeys out there that aren't necessarily as quality driven or as flavorful, maybe not quality driven, but flavorful as this guy here. And I think that really it just needs to be, it's an educational battle, as I mentioned before, just teaching people what this is and that this specific wheat whiskey is going to be a good choice, specifically the cask strength iteration, as you guys have pointed out. So,
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. This beats at least 2 large Kentucky distilleries wheat whiskeys.
Oh,
that I
yeah.
have.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah,
a problem.
I think of myself as like a wheat whiskey connoisseur, and this is like now top of my list.
This is a different, totally different ballpark here.
No, one of my favorite wheat whiskeys is 100% wheat. Comes from Boot Hill in Dodge City, Kansas. And it's excellent. This is right up there with it.
well, thank you very much.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much.
You know, and like I said, because I even told those people out there when I tried it, I said, well, this beats Bernheim, all the, you know.
We weren't using names. We weren't using real names here.
I'm sorry.
Now, wait a minute. That's setting the chinning bar really, really low.
Yeah.
Oh, we got a distiller in St. Louis that does a good job with the wheat whiskey.
Yeah. We do.
Yeah, but they're not they're not an easy thing to pull off right. So you guys are doing good.
When you see the big guys struggle with making a great wheat whiskey, you know it's tough because they're good at what they do. And it's definitely unique to work with. That's for sure.
Yeah, so that one's fantastic. Probably drink some water. Let's move on to this rye at 90 proof.
So I really wanted you guys to try each of the wheat whiskey and the rye whiskey, the 90 proof variation and the cask strength variation. Generally, when you are doing tastings, you want to go low proof and then go up. But because we were tasting different styles, I wanted to go in this kind of stepped fashion. So that is a very good point. Please make sure to cleanse your palate and get ready for the rye.
Okay.
The next product that we're going to be trying is Bare Knuckle Straight Rye Whiskey. And this one is a very easy mash bill to remember. It's 100% rye, okay? And it's 100% Virginia-based rye. This one right here is one of my favorites as well. Honestly, like I said, I would drink any and all of these. The fighter on the front is probably the most famous of the three fighters that we've gone through today. This is Jack Johnson.
Sure.
And so he, like I said, he's probably the most well-known of the three. Before I had mentioned where these pitchers actually come from. And they actually come from Turkey Red's cards. So very much like you would take box tops off of General Mills, like cereal boxes, and send them in for school supplies nowadays. Back in the 1920s and I think 30s, you would take cigarette tops, send them in for boxing cards. So that's where these actually come from.
How cool.
What's interesting is Jimmy Gardner, our fighter on the wheat whiskey, and Jack Johnson basically had their own Turkey Reds cards. Texas Mamie, being a female fighter, really did not have a Turkey Reds card. So this actually comes from a newspaper article. And what we have done is pulled that image from a newspaper article and actually put her on her own Turkey Red card. Because we wanted to celebrate the fact that she was a fighter in that time frame just the same. You'll also notice very subtly, and you're not going to be able to see this here, it says round 4. This was the 4th whiskey, the white whiskey, the wheat, the rye, and then the bourbon that we created. So there's a lot of subtle kind of pieces to the label that kind of lend themselves. And I love that kind of subtlety. If you know, you know, but if you don't know it, you can just like skim over it and not ever know. So this product right here, along with the wheat whiskey, is going to be sitting at probably about 36 to 40 months. So 36, 3 years to just over 3 years. And I'm very interested in hearing what all flavor profile you guys are tasting from Bare Knuckle Rye Whiskey.
And we're doing the 90 proof?
We are doing
90 proof.
Yes, sir.
And if you ever see the bottle and you see the black KO and the black top with, or excuse me, the black kind of background with the gold, that is our standard small batch. If you ever see the gold, that is going to be either a single barrel or single barrel cask strength. The cask strength will have it'll have the proof and whatnot on the front of it, along with that stamp. Okay.
So Peter, while we're at it, what all states are you distributed? I can almost say that word. Almost got there.
It is sample 7, Peter. It's sample 7. Come on. Give her a break.
Getting ready to fall off the court.
Q, ask that question on sample 1. You'll be better.
I probably would still go about the same way for me. Where do you distribute? There we go.
So we are distributed in Virginia, DC, Maryland, and Delaware. We are in the works of getting into a couple more kind of East Coast states as we speak. And so that is part of the plan in the not so distant future. However, what I would tell you is that we are a part of some DC liquor retailers. Thank you very much. Some DC liquor retailers who can actually ship to about 40 out of the 50 states. And rather than me telling you all the different options that you have in DC, what I would recommend that you do is go to our website, www.kodistilling.com, or just Google KO Distilling, and you can find how to find our spirits on our website. It'll divert you to those different places where you can go ahead and order our spirits and have them shipped. And you would be surprised how economical it actually is to do that with some of the DC liquor distributors, or not distributors, but retailers.
What if we want to ship a whole barrel?
Say again?
What if we
Oh,
want to ship a whole barrel?
So if you're looking for a full barrel, we actually have gotten recently very much into full barrel sales, or I should say harvesting full barrels to either do, single barrel offerings of our different spirits. So if you're interested in that, please give me a call, because I could definitely set something up like that.
Are you available tomorrow morning?
I will.
There's a few that are interested.
Well, it sounds like we might have some people who want a wheat whiskey barrel, in the not so distant future. So
yeah, that's true.
But in reality, we are actually doing full barrel sales. What I will tell you is that we have a select amount of barrels that we can do that with in order to maintain our production needs. And as I mentioned before, it really depends on how quickly our consumers are drinking and consuming the product. Because if we have products like the bare knuckle bourbon that are going as quickly as they are, we just don't have the kind of extra barrels to go ahead and do something like that, if that makes sense. But something like the wheat whiskey, which is the hidden gem, it's really kind of a lesser known style, but it's really delicious. That would make a phenomenal kind of private label where you could choose your own barrel and then do with that whatever you wanted to. So we're seeing a lot of like bourbon clubs or whiskey clubs that will take advantage of doing exactly that.
So Peter, in the distillery, how many barrels are you laying down a day?
That's a great question. I don't know if I gave you a daily number, it would have to be an average, because we do a lot of different things, but not necessarily all on the same day. So it's not like we're doing a consistent number. What I would tell you is that our goal, and we are on track to meet our goal, is 1,000 barrels over a year's time. So if you were to divide that by 12, that would give you a rough estimation as to what
1,000 barrels of whiskey, or 1,000 barrels
of whiskey.
Okay.
Yeah.
That would be exactly where you're at in Manassas.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're,
where is your rick house at?
the rick houses, we have two actually. So one is on site. So we are, if you're familiar with the Manassas area, are you familiar with Manassas at all?
I am.
Okay, so basically you have 66 that runs kind of east-west, and then you have 234 that comes down into the city of Manassas. So 234 turns into 28 that goes into the city of Manassas, and we are right on the outskirts of the city of Manassas. So if you come down 66 to 234 and then start going into the city from kind of the west, we're right as you are about to go into the city. And if you go to our website, you can see exactly what our address looks like and find us pretty easily. I can give you some more landmarks if that helps you, but depending on how familiar you are with Manassas. If you know where the baseball fields are right across from the Exxon, or,
yes,
right up the road on Godwin. And to answer the question about rick houses and where we store our spirits, we have some of our barrels here on site at the distillery, and we always have, but we did expand to a point where we couldn't fit all of the barrels that we had here at the distillery. So we have another rick house that's about a 5-mile drive from our distillery, where we have the bulk of our spirits, and they're laid up within that warehouse.
Okay.
Yep, that's a great question.
All right, so who wants to share some tasting notes on this rye? Don't all jump in.
I love it's full in the palate. It's got everything. Like some of those have a little bit of holes, but it's front to back. Everything's covered there. A great spicy note at the end. I just think it's a great balance all the way across. This would be a great cocktail whiskey.
Mm-hmm.
I love a good Manhattan with this whiskey. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. What were you saying?
No, I was just saying it'd be a great cocktail whiskey. I just think it's full on palate, so it's got a strong backbone that'll hold up well with a mixer.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like that rye spice is like exactly what you think a rye should be like.
Yeah,
it's great.
I love rye. There's just a creaminess to this. almost a mild pepperiness, sweet pepper. And then I can't wait to taste this thing at Castro.
I know.
Yeah, let's
That's
do
what
it. Do not stop waiting. Let's do it. Let's get to that cast drink.
I feel like it's the pepper note, but the caramel note with a tad bit of vanilla in it just kind of smooths it out. It
Well,
just makes it.
It does, yeah.
It's a little
It's
more
like the
viscous.
spice in it.
It's a little more viscous than your other offerings.
Yeah.
Like it just kind of just holds there on the tongue.
Honestly, I will say that this product right here has surprised a lot of people as well, with as delicious as it is and well balanced it is as well. You know, when you think 100% rye, you think it's going to be really spicy, but there's some beautiful sweet undertones in it. There's just a well-roundedness that I think has been mentioned here, and I totally agree with. So the single barrel variation of bare knuckle rye whiskey, not what we're going to be drinking here, but the single barrel non-cast strength, actually won the best craft rye in America by a website called The Manual. I don't know if they tried every rye in America. If they did, I wish I'd been on that team. We'll take it. It's amazing. What I will tell you is that I mentioned before that KO Distillers Reserve Bottled and Bond Bourbon has won a double gold at the San Francisco World Spirits Competition. This spirit that we're about to taste has as well. So it won double gold a couple years prior to KO Distillers Reserve Bottled and Bond Bourbon. So what we're going to be trying here is the last spirit. And the reason why I've left this as last is this is one of my absolute favorites as well.
Oh God.
This is going to be
Sorry.
Scott.
I love this. Oh my Lord.
Rick, why does your name say Rick Brenner and not the legend?
Yeah.
That's a misprint.
Yeah, it's
So I think the flavor really speaks for itself. I don't really need to just taste it, enjoy. Again, because it's cast strength, let your mouth acclimate on that first sip. The second sip is where you get all that beautiful flavor. What are you guys pulling out of this spirit here?
Everything.
Oh.
Right,
Definitely on the nose. There's a ton of honeysuckle.
Super sweet nose. Like
yes.
For a rye, especially, it's way sweeter than you.
Good thing. Yeah.
Like, do you guys remember, like, I don't know, like at Cracker Barrel or like the country stores, and like you get those like little honey sticks?
Yes.
Like the flavored honey sticks.
Oh,
It
yeah.
tastes like the cinnamon honey stick.
Yes. And cinnamon is one of those things that in this one, I detect so much beautiful cinnamon in there. And I don't know what exactly causes that, but it is delicious. And I love how that cinnamon fits in. So I'm glad you did it.
Definitely.
Does the rye give that?
I'll say hands down, this is your best offering.
Yes.
This is
Yes.
it is fantastic. It is full on palate. That great honey note in the front, spice on the backside, lingering finish, nice viscosity. It's delicious.
Good legs.
Thank you. Thank you.
I will concur.
I like the mouthfeel. Oh. No joke, Steve. No joke.
Well, now you see the tough market for the wheat whiskey. Our rye whiskey is killer as well.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
This is my favorite for sure.
Scott, that's what you just said with the last one.
And they're all the
I
favorites.
said it was great. I can't wait to taste the cast strength. And this is my favorite. Take your own inventory, Steve.
So how many barrels of this do you have available for single picks?
It's a serious question.
A friend wants to know.
A friend wants to know. So we do have a lot of rye whiskey barrels that we put up, but what I will tell you is we have a new product coming out, as I had mentioned before, which is going to be KO Distillers Reserve Bottled and Bond Rye Whiskey, which is going to be the same 100% rye, but again, barrels that were selected as the best, held in reserve to be aged a little bit longer. So what I will tell you is that most of the barrels that have been earmarked for these, or basically the barrels that have not been earmarked for the two products we have tried, are going to be earmarked for the longer aged, higher quality, if you can get higher quality than what we're drinking here, but KO Distillers Reserve Bottled and Bond Rye Whiskey. So the Virginia ABC, we're working with them right now in order to basically get a listing to be listed in a variety of ABC stores across the state. And that should be available in DC, Maryland, Delaware, along with on the website too. That should be actually released in September. So I want you guys to mark your calendars. If anybody's in Virginia on September 11th, our anniversary is September 12th. And so we're celebrating on September 11th. It's actually the 20th anniversary of September 11th, September 11th, which is crazy. I think it's been 20 years. But we are also kind of celebrating our own victory there and kind of commemorating September 11th as well. So mark that on your calendar. We got some other stuff that's coming, and I will tell you that is a dynamic bottle and bond offering as well. So if you like the bottle and bond bourbon and you like the bare knuckle rye whiskey, especially the cask strength, I think you're in for a treat with some of the other stuff we have coming.
Wow.
Yeah. So this rye, this cask strength rye and that bottled and bond, like both, everything was fantastic, but these two are absolutely like rock star standouts, I think.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm big on the nose, and then what follows through with the taste on the mouth, and it 100% follows through with that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
That's very good.
Fantastic. Yeah. Does anybody else want to like share anything on this one or any others? Just feel free to jump in.
Steve McNew, we're going on a road trip.
We should. Pick me up on the way. I am on your way to Virginia. Just throw me in the back. Let's go.
I don't want to think you're on the way, McNew.
No, you have to drive
You have
down.
to drive through Indiana to get to Virginia. Just come get me. Take 70 here and then go whichever way it goes. Figure it out.
You drive down 55. We'll pick you up.
So you take 70 to Indianapolis, get me, and then go whichever way you would go.
I'll pick you up in Nashville.
We'll say we'll pick you up at like 2 o'clock. We won't be there, but we'll tell you we will.
This is rude. All right, guys, I am going to turn off the recording. Everybody is welcome to hang out and chit chat. But thank you for a great Try It series. Thank you, Peter and KO Distilling. It has been fantastic.
Thank you.
Peter.
Also, thank you, Peter, so much.
With us.
Thanks, Peter.
Thanks, Peter.